services that we offer. So from project online consulting to Microsoft Team apps and adoption, as well as we organize workshops regarding Power Apps and provide support and Apps Factory. We also offer consulting on Power Automates as well as some workflows. And we have some pre-configured apps that today we'll be talking about one of them, PPM 360. And finally, we also have and provide consulting regarding Power BIs and some support and workshops to ensure that the data that you have in your organization is useful and dynamic to take decisions. So 86% of the CEOs consider digital their first priority. So digital transformation occurs through projects and programs, and that's why today is very relevant, the insight that we're going to be sharing. Here, we wanted to talk about the 3 solutions in Microsoft regarding project management. So the first one, I believe some of you are familiar, is Planner, is more based on tasks. Here we can see that the solutions are regarding capability, complexity, and as well as role. So Planner is more in a task level. Then we have Project for the Web, that is what we're going to be focused today. And that is very relevant in today's reality. Since in the next 2 years, Microsoft vision is that to keep evolving Project for the Web and to be offering the same capabilities as Project Online. One of the key differentiators between Project for the Web and Project Online is that Project Online offers much more capabilities, like, for example, resource allocation, one of them. So today, in today's webinar, we're going to be talking about PP 360, that is basic, that embrace of Project for the Web. So we add more features, more capabilities, and we connect the different solutions of Microsoft in terms of project management. So here it is. So PPM 360 is the extended project for the web. So it integrates app, process automation, and business intelligence. So here there is the 6 points. And just to give you more insights before my colleague Neil will be jumping to the demo. So we have task management with Project for the Web, project team collaboration with Microsoft Team, project intake and advanced project management app powered apps. So basically, here is the way that we can evaluate those projects, score those projects, and set up priorities. Then we also have a piece regarding the integration with Power BI to utilize those data generating on the projects that are being worked to give like more visibility on a management level. We also want to talk about project governance with Power Automate to give more information and more details of those ongoing projects. So finally, if we wrap up all, we have that PPM 360 connects the different work management applications of Microsoft 365 and as well embrace the Project for the Web regarding some extra features and apps that we add as well. So I'm sure that in all your projects, when managing your projects, you need like governance, you need kind of like to have access, to give access to your team in a sharing way of documents, financials, as well as collaboration, maybe using like teams in the different projects, task management, project teams, security, communication, workflow reporting, methodology. So all of these we're going to be covered on the PPM 360, and we're going to see on the demo. Kind of like what we do in PPM 360 is that we bring all together. So we bring like Power Apps, Office 365, Power Automate, Power BI, Teams. So to make sure that everything is connected and that there is no data silos or gaps in between those solutions. Going now more into details, and before this, the last slide before we're going to jump into the real demo. So what we're going to see. So starting from the top to the bottom, we're going to start with project intake ideation. So how we can manage those ideas, score these ideas, and evaluate and prioritize which is the first to go ahead. Then project creation and governance, giving more capabilities on the way we manage the projects and be more efficient with more capabilities that existing in the project for the web. Schedule management, collaboration with teams and document management, because at the end, most of us, we work remotely, and now Teams become part of our daily life, but sometimes Teams is not well connected with other solutions in Microsoft 360. So we're going to share today our proposal. Then we're going to dive deep into the analytics and reporting. As I said, like we have data, we have projects, but how we take decisions. So that should be facilitated through these automatic and dynamic reports. And finally, we're going to answer any question regarding integrations of the different solutions. So here I would like to let Neil introduce himself before jumping to the demo. Please, Neil, can you go ahead?
Hi, everybody. This is Neil Alcott. I'm a senior solutions architect here at Marquee 360, and I'll be doing the demo and answering any of the questions you guys may have.
Thank you very much. One more thing before I will hand off to you, Neil. Sorry. Please use the chat here on the Teams, because I will be paying special attention and answering all the questions you might have during all the presentation. Thank you very much, and you can take from here.
Okay, so let me share my screen. So as Juan mentioned, we're going to focus on project for the web and our PPM 360 Power App. But everything I'll be showing you today is built on top of the Microsoft Power Platform. And you can really leverage the Power Platform to build out a lot of your internal processes so that you can streamline those processes, make them electronic, and of course gather the information, the data related to those processes through the Power Platform. So what you're going to see is a combination of not just project for the web and the scheduling capabilities of that, but around that, how do we leverage the Power Platform with Power Apps to provide user interfaces for our team members to interact with whatever our process might be, and then Power Automate to automate that process. And then finally, with the data that we're collecting as part of that process, how do we analyze and visualize that data? And we would use Power BI for that. So we're going to kind of walk through and see all those capabilities. So where I'm going to start here is with an intake process. So we have several different project intake apps, but this is an intake app that's a Canvas Power App, which means from a licensing perspective, your regular users, who have basic Office 365, Power Apps capability would be able to submit project requests or ideas, however you would want to handle this process, and then the automation would then kick in, and depending on how you would want it to be automated, pretty much the sky's the limit at that point. So what we have here is a Canvas Power App. It's called Intake 360, and what you see here is all the different requests that are currently going through the intake process. Now, this can be security based as well. So maybe the requesters can only see the items that they've submitted. Maybe they can only see the items that have been submitted for their department or their group, their division. But you can, set it up with different types of security models. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and start a new request. When I do that, you can see we have a tab form where we can collect information about that request. And again, with Power Apps, you can modify these pages and these forms to capture the information that you want to capture. In this case, it's fairly detailed. We have different tabs collecting different types of information. Sometimes it's just a simple form. For example, if they're just submitting an idea, it might just be one form. Also, with the tabs, we can make those security based as well. So there might be a tab that maybe only the security team sees or only the PMO team sees. So you can secure each tab and then whatever forms related to that tab. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to start a new request. And I already pre-staged one of these before the demo started, so we don't have to wait too long for some of the automation to kick in. Here I'm going to say who the project sponsor is, so it's doing a lookup against our Azure Active Directory. And then we have request types here. Now, in my demo environment here, I'm showing this on the form that the requester's filling out. A lot of times this might actually be something that, maybe the PMO or whoever's doing the approvals would fill out. But the whole idea with the request types is using the automation, how do we standardize the setup of different types of projects? If you're familiar with Project Online has a concept of, project types. This is a similar concept to that. So when we create a new project, do we want that project to have a particular schedule template? Does it need certain phases, stages, and gates? Are there document templates that are going to be related to that project type? Again, it allows us to leverage Power Automate to then automate the setup of those projects to make sure that everybody's doing the projects in the same way, according to whatever your standards are. So here you can see different project types. The other thing too is keep in mind that sometimes you might not, maybe you want to use different tools for different types of projects. So in other words, you might be using Project Online or Project for the Web for more of your, formal project management scheduling needs. But for something that's a little bit lighter, like a marketing campaign, maybe you just want to use Microsoft Teams and Planner. It's going to be relatively light. Using Power Automate, not only would we set up the project, but we could also decide, well, what tools do we want to use with that project? So it kind of opens up your mind a little bit on how you would want to set that up. In this case, I'm just going to do an individual project, which will be a project for the web project. And then here you see, we have different fields, just capture kind of the business need. I'm just going to put some sample into here. As I go to each tab, you can see there's different types of fields that we could then capture. For financials, we're just capturing some pretty basic information here, but you could have a more detailed financial screen too if you want to. The scoring tab, this is something that's pretty popular with a lot of our customers, particularly if you're doing any kind of like business case submission or idea submission. How do we get the requester to think about, how does this request align with what our organizational goals are? So you can hit them with some different questions or business drivers, and then here they could pick a response. And then as they are filling out the survey here, it's calculating what the priority score is. If you're familiar with Project Online has a similar function with portfolio analysis, but that actually requires the project to be in Project Online, which then can get into some licensing implications. You may want to use something like this, where the requester is getting a first pass at prioritization using the basic, Office 365, Power Apps licensing, before it even becomes a project or, it goes into Project for the Web or Project Online. I see there's one question, this can all be customized. Yes. So everything that you see here, can be modified for your different, business needs, whatever your fields might be for your organization.
We have another question, Neil. So can Intake 360 be used standalone, or does it have to be used with PPM 360?
The Intake app? Is that what
Yes.
you're referring to? Yeah, the Intake app can be used standalone. It can be used with, Project Online, Project for the Web, Azure DevOps. The whole idea with the automation is we can really connect it to any system and then automate the setup of those types of projects. Could even be non-Microsoft, like if you have a Jira implementation, maybe we want to create the Jira project automatically once this intake's been approved. We could do it that way too.
Thank you.
All right. So once I fill all this out, I go ahead and submit it. And once I submit it, the Power App basically is triggering a Power Automate flow to take place. And again, the Power Automate flow can be built depending on what your organization needs are. But in my demo environment, the first step of the Power Automate flow is to run an approval process. So it's going to run an approval process to get somebody to approve this particular request. Once it gets approved, then the rest of the automation is going to kick in, which will then set up the project, however we want to use the different tools for that. So for example, here, if I go to my Outlook, here you can see one of those requests. And when I go into here, you can then see some of the content that I put into that Power App is actually here in the email itself. And the whole idea with this, and again, this is another area where these emails can be customized depending on what you want to display. But displaying some of the content right in the email gives the approver the opportunity to maybe approve it without having to open up the full form. There is a link to do that, so you can see the link right up here. But if I look at this might be enough information for me to then make a decision on this request. In this case, I have just a simple approve or reject. But a lot of our customers would also have other buttons like, I need more information, or I want to route it to somebody else for approvals, things like that. But if I look at this and it looks good to me, I can go ahead and approve it, put in comments, and then submit it. And that would complete the approval part of my process. And now the automation would kick in to actually set up the project. If we go back to the intake app here, you can see there is a request status. So depending on your flow and everything else, this will automatically update, whenever I refresh the screen to whatever the current status is. And again, you would build that into the automation. Now for this automation in the demo, it's going to do several different things. So one is it's going to create a project for the web project. It's going to create a Microsoft team, and it's going to set up that Microsoft team to be integrated with that project for the web project. All right, so we're talking to several different pieces of the Microsoft ecosystem to set up this particular project. But once we do that, then you'll be able to work within Microsoft Teams on this particular project. So when we get into the project for the web part of this, there's a couple different aspects to it. How do you work with an individual project, which would primarily be through Teams, and then tabs inside of Teams to work with project for the web. And then from a portfolio perspective, that's where our PPM 360 Power App comes into play. So if I go to Microsoft Teams, I think our team's still getting created here, but I'm going to use one of these projects that have already been created here. So when I go into here, this Chesapeake project, DEF, and on the general channel, up here you can see there's a couple different tabs, and these were set up as part of the automation for that project setup. So if I go to project details, this is part of the PPM 360 Power App, and this will show the details of that particular project. So when I go into here, I can see things like, what's the overall governance process? What are the different phases and stages and gates that this project's going to go through? And I can see this, graphically. If I click on any of these, I can then see, what items are required, to be done before I can go to whatever the next stage might be. And with these stages too, you could also set up approvals. So in other words, to go from executing to closing, maybe somebody has to review the project and then approve it. Below here, you have information about the project. And again, this information can be set up, depending on what your organizational needs are. So different fields can be added, or, the different values can be added. But here you can see some general information about the project classification, and on some of these, you have drop-down lists with different selections. And then we also have some KPIs. In my environment here, the KPIs are simply just toggles that somebody would set, but these could also be driven by automation and by formulas, depending on the information currently in the project. And then along the top here, you see we have different tabs, which will collect other information about the project. And again, this is my demo environment. So what you're seeing here is, configuration set up just to demo some of this functionality, but you would be able to add your own fields and collect whatever information you might need. So for example, here, if I want to set the go live date, I can go ahead and do that. If I go to benefits, project estimates, so down here you can see a more detailed estimate screen, project budget. Now with budget and financials, we actually have another Power App that gives a more detailed view of financials. I'll open that up real quick before the end of the webinar just to show you guys that. Task, which I'm actually going to look at here in Teams. But then you have the more traditional project management functions like action items, issues, risk, change request, lessons learned, and then status reports. And if I look at status reports, you can see here for every week or whatever time period we're doing the reporting on, we can save a history of that. So if I were to go into here and open this up, kind of see what we could collect as part of the status report. So we have all the different KPIs of that week, but then comments on what happened with each KPI. And that would be saved as a history, so you'd be able to look at the trending over time. Okay. So again, everything that we're seeing here, this is part of our PPM 360 app, looking at one individual project. And then when we go into the scheduling component, if we go under task, here we'll see the project for the web schedule. So with project for the web, if you haven't seen it already, project for the web is Microsoft's new project management service. It's built on top of the Power Platform, and it's a much more modern, responsive user interface than Project Online. So Project Online is built on top of SharePoint architecture. It has a SharePoint look and feel, whereas Project for the Web has more of a Dynamics type look and feel, or a Power Apps model-driven app feel. But here you can see you can have a pretty detailed schedule here, and then you can assign different team members to the work. And then depending on what you want to display, there's start date, finish date, effort, things like that. Now, what's really nice about the project for the web interface, so for example, if I go down to here, I can go ahead and create new task.
We have one question, Neil, from Mika. So the question is, how about change management process here and the baselining?
The baselining.
Yeah.
So baselining, project for the web doesn't currently have baselining. That's on Microsoft's roadmap. So one thing with project for the web is, it is a product that Microsoft is being pretty agile with. So they're continuously, adding additional capabilities with that. Baselining is on their roadmap. I don't know exactly, when it's going to be added, but you will be able to do that, at some point in time to then pick up variances and, if you want to calculate earned value and things like that. For the change management process, do you mean, change request and approving change request and then changing like the schedule or the scope of the project? I think that's what she means. So with that, we would actually set that up within the we would actually set that up as part of the PPM 360 app. So if I go back to here and I go to the change request tab, here's the change request form. So people can then fill out the request form, and then using Power Automate, we can route it through an approval process. And really, depending on what you want to do, it may just stop after it gets approved, and then the PM would modify the schedule, which is probably the more typical thing we see with customers. But with the automation, it is very powerful. Like you could actually have it go and maybe add a change request line to the schedule based on, the effort that's been put into here. So you could actually like create a task in the schedule that represents that change request. I don't see that too often, but the automation is pretty powerful. It can actually do things like that. So, okay. Yep. So let me go back to the schedule here. So with Project for the Web, and as I was mentioning, it is pretty powerful here. You can go in and you can, add task right here through Teams or through the web browser. You can then pick who it's assigned to. If you're familiar with Project Online's resources would come from the enterprise resource pool, which has to be set up and maintained. But Project for the Web, it just uses your Azure Active Directory. So anybody that's a user within Office 365, theoretically you could pick. And with the licensing, a regular Office 365 user would at least have read rights to the project schedule here. No additional licensing to just view the schedule. So if I go into here and I want to assign this to Mia, I can just go ahead and click on Mia, or maybe I want to assign it to 2 people. I can go ahead and do that. And then I can go in and say, this is going to take 5 days. And then depending on, what I put in here, it'll automatically start scheduling the start and finish dates of this new task. But where this really differs from, say, Microsoft Project or Project Online are the other views that we have here. So you do have a timeline view. This is where your more traditional, Gantt chart view would come into play. But again, it's a much more modern, fluid interface compared to the Project Online Gantt chart. So as I go into here and I'm looking at this, you can see it's a very clean, look and feel. But what's really nice about this is it's also very flexible, right? So if I need to change my schedule, I can just drag and drop and move task around, and you can see it automatically updates. If I want to link tasks together, so for example, this task I just added, maybe I want to make it dependent on the end of that particular task, I can just go in and using these connectors, drag and drop and connect them up. So again, it's a much more modern, easy to use interface for the scheduling. One of the things with Microsoft Project and Project Online is, particularly people that haven't been trained in Microsoft Project, they tend to fight the scheduling engine. Whereas with Project for the Web, it's a lot more sleek. You tend not to fight it so much. And now, granted, it might not be as powerful or have all the capabilities of Microsoft Project from a scheduling perspective. There are times where you still might want to use Microsoft Project, but probably for 90% of the projects that are being done, the capabilities in Project for the Web will meet that need. So you have the timeline view, and then you also have the board view, which gives you the more traditional, kind of Kanban card, mapping style of managing a project. So we go to the board view, you can see here we have different buckets, and then we have tasks that are within those buckets. And in this case, I could also go and look at it by progress, which is more of your traditional Kanban board view. So what's not started yet, what's started and in progress, and then what's completed. And of course, you can also go in and add task right here as well. So. And I can pick which bucket it's going to go into, who I'm going to assign it to, and then add that task. All right. So again, nice, modern UI for, managing the project schedule. So what we've been looking at here is an individual project, right? Working on it within Microsoft Teams, we can capture the project details and allow people to see the project details. We can then manage the project task and the overall schedule. But from a portfolio management point of view, that's where our PPM 360 Power App would come into play. So I have it open right here. So if I open this up, now what I'm seeing is at a higher level. So each one of these are individual projects. And then I can see the percent complete, start date, finish date, budget, schedule, scope, KPIs, how much effort is it, and how much has been completed so far. And if I go down here, this is that project we were just looking at. So if I click on that project now here within this Power App, I'm seeing the same information, excuse me, that we were just seeing within the Microsoft Teams for this project. All right, so what this allows you to do is more from a portfolio perspective, go in, get an overall idea of all the different projects, get some visibility across all the projects, and then still have the ability to drill down into the project and then get more details about that particular project. If I want to get into the project schedule, right? Whoops, going back to here. So again, this is great. You can then see this, but then using Power Apps, we can extend this and add additional capabilities, right? So these are all Project for the Web projects, just as a list. But we do have different views here. So if I go in, I just want to look at the active projects, or maybe I want to go in, I just want to look at the closed projects, or maybe I want a timeline view, from a Gantt chart perspective, like when are these projects hitting our timeline? And I have a lot of demo projects in here, so it's not that sexy, but you get the idea. I can go into here and I can get a quick view of when are all these projects hitting the timeline, and what does it look like. But we could also manage portfolios and programs. So if I go into here, I can create different portfolios, and the portfolios themselves can have their own metadata. So as you can see here, there's a form where you can manage, the overall portfolio information, including, roll-ups of budget information. And then when I go to the projects tab, here you can see the projects that are part of that particular portfolio. And if I want to add a project, I can create a new project right here, or I can add an existing project, something that's already been started, but I'm going to add it to this portfolio. So using Power Apps, you can really adapt this depending on, what it is you want to see. As we go down here, I could see my resources. And then since this is tied in with, the CRM, dynamic CRM capability, you also have things like accounts and contacts. And then finally, all this information is available for reporting. So when I open up Power BI, we can then have Power BI reporting against all this information. So here's some example Power BI reports. This is a report pack Microsoft provides, but we can go in and we can get an idea of how many projects do we have, how many hours across all those projects, what's been completed, what's currently in progress, what's not started. If I click on any of these, it'll automatically drill down to that particular area. Or if I want to look at, particular PM's projects. If we go to the portfolio milestone, this is another Gantt chart type view of our portfolio. I could adjust it to whatever time frame I want to look at. Portfolio milestones. So what's been completed in the last 30 days and what's coming up in the next 30 days. All those tasks that are being assigned to different resources, all that information can bubble up into our resource dashboards. So I can see how many resources do we have, how many tasks are assigned to each one. And if I go in and I pick a particular resource, I can see what projects are they working on, what have they completed so far, what's the workload remaining. You can kind of see that right here.
We have one question, Neil. So if we use Project Online and Project for, do you have Power BI reports we can use? So do we provide these?
For Project Online?
Project Online and Project for the Web.
Correct. Yeah. So what I'm actually showing you here is more of the project for the web reports. But we do have a set of reports that's also for Project Online. So I'm just opening Project Online real quick. So this is our report pack for Project Online reports. So the answer is yes. You know, we do a lot of Power BI work naturally because of the nature of working with PMOs. They need a lot of reporting, a lot of visibility. So we do a lot of different Power BI reports and report packs for people. Okay. Going back to here, we also have an overview of the task, project timelines. So with this, you could call up a particular project. Just do this guy. And basically this is just showing the schedule of that particular project right here within Power BI in a Gantt chart view. And if you want to go in and say, just show me the tasks that are happening in August, you can use this timeline picker to go right to a particular time frame and see the work that's happening in that time frame. And then there's a couple reports here that are more for the individual user, just to see what their work is. And also from a timeline perspective, again, what are the tasks that they're supposed to be working on, on a particular month? Which projects are they supposed to be working on? So a lot of this, as you're managing the project, Power BI just gives you visibility into the project information, the task information, the resource information that, normally would be pretty hard to get, particularly if you're doing Excel or some of the more manual methods. I see Girish has a question.
Yes,
So with Office, go ahead. Go ahead, Juan.
Yes, so actually, Girish is asking if with Office 365 platform, do we get all these apps that you are mentioning, such as Project for the Web, Intake app, Power Apps, and Power BI, etc.?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways to look at that. So Office 365 as a platform does provide the different services, right? So there's the Power App service, the Power Automate service, the Power BI service. And Microsoft does provide some, templates for some of those. For example, there's template Power Apps and template flows and template Power BI reports, depending on what it is that you're trying to do. For us as a partner, we've pre-built some of our own templates, and that's basically what you're seeing with the Intake app, the Power BI reports I'm showing you, the PPM 360 app. So there are things that we sell as a partner, along with the setup and modification of that to meet your organization's needs. And then the other part that you have to consider with all this too is licensing. So Microsoft has different licensing tiers depending on exactly what it is you're doing. A lot of times with the Power Platform, your Office 365 license, for example, if you have an E3 or an E5 license, includes a base level of Power Apps, Power Automate capabilities. Typically, it's more defined around what you're trying to connect to. So if you're trying to connect your Power App or your Flow to, say, SharePoint, that's considered part of the standard license. But if you're trying to connect that Power App or your Flow to, say, Salesforce or Oracle or some what they would call a premium connector, then you're going to get bumped up into one of the licensing tiers. Power BI's licensing model is a little bit different than that. There is a free version of Power BI, but it's only meant for individual use. If you want to share those reports with other people, then you need to get into the Power BI Pro or Power BI Premium licensing. But to answer Karish's question, it's kind of multifaceted. There's the services that are available in Office 365. There's the services that we're providing as a partner, but then there's also licensing implications that you just have to be aware of. The intake app that I just showed you, this is basically from a licensing perspective. You can do this with your core Office 365, E3, E5 licenses. But when you get into some of the project stuff, you're probably going to need a project license. So again, it just depends on exactly what your requirements are. We work with customers to figure out exactly what your licensing needs are, and then work with either your licensing reseller or Microsoft to make sure that you have the correct licensing.
Thank you, Neil. Yeah, and actually, I want to add something that I will be happy. So all of you have my email, so we can also set up one-to-one sessions that we can dive deep and actually do like more customized sessions. Thank you.
Yep. Does anybody have other questions? I'm at the end of the demo. I'm going to hand it back. Go ahead, Karen. I saw you raise your hand.
Hi. Yeah, sorry, I joined a bit late, but what I'm looking for, what I'm interested in is I work out of our central sort of corporate PMO, and we've been tasked with pulling together a view of all activity going on across our organisation. So it would be a mix of BAU and the portfolio, the change portfolio, and we might also consider pulling in product roadmaps as well as part of that. So, and we are using, obviously, we're quite heavily invested in Microsoft 365. We already do our reporting off Power Apps and Power BI.
Great.
So this is why I was quite interested. And I just wondered if you think this could be customized to cover this sort of quite broad need that we're looking for.
Yeah, it definitely can. And one of the things, that we've done with some other customers is with the automation that's happening in the background, we can integrate with, other systems. So depending on exactly, how those other items are being managed, for example, when you say roadmap, are you using Microsoft's roadmap functionality or is it some other tool, right? So there's a couple different things you can do. One is with Power BI. Power BI does support hundreds of connectors. So typically you can connect to those different data sources and then create a mashup of that data into a single Power BI report or dashboard. Yeah. That's a relatively easy integration. Not easy, but you know what I mean. But you're kind of keeping it at the reporting level. You could also do it more at the data level. So in other words, in a view like this, we might have a situation, for example, with maybe a project's being managed in Jira or Azure DevOps. That's where all the work's happening. But we want to see it in the portfolio. So we could actually do an integration at that level where a project gets created in Jira. It also creates a placeholder project here in the portfolio where you can track, the overall status and whatnot. But the developers and whatnot, they're managing their work over in Jira. We're not going to try to get them to move off of Jira and use Project for the Web to manage their work. So you can do it in a couple different ways. The one thing I would say with that is if you just want to kind of get the activities together, Power BI might be the easier answer to that. But if the projects themselves are going to have their own metadata similar to kind of what you're seeing here, I'd probably do it at the data level. That way the portfolio manager can manage this outside of Jira, but it's still connected and it's pulling some of the information from Jira.
Yeah, and I think there's also, it's the resourcing element as well, because we want to include the resource forecasting alongside this. So it's, there's several facets we're looking at.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing too, like with the resourcing part of it, a lot of times with like DevOps and Jira, they're not necessarily focusing, they're focusing on who it's assigned to, but not necessarily their capacity and, from a planning perspective, the forecasting. And that's really where either Project on the Line or Project for the Web could help that out. and you leverage that capability.
Okay, that's good to know. Thanks.
Yep. Any other questions? Going once? Going twice? All right, Juan, I'm going to hand it back to you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. So yes, I just want to add one more thing. So we're going to be sending the recording to all of you of the session. And also I'm going to be sending my email, a very quick survey, since we organize a lot of webinars, so that you can choose which topic is more relevant for you, so that we just invite you to those more relevant webinars. And yeah, and any questions from this session after you, feel free to also share with your teams. I will be happy to move those conversations in more to one-to-one, so that we can dive deeper. So thank you very much for all of you, and yeah, have a nice day.